Don't let anybody make you think that God chose America as his divine messianic force to be a sort of policeman of the whole world. God has a way of standing before the nations with judgment, and it seems that I can hear God saying to America, "You are too arrogant. And if you don't change your ways, I will rise up and break the backbone of your power."
Hotep, which in the language of ancient Egypt means we come with justice in peace. Welcome to Freedom Now, a Saturday Pan-Africanist and Internationalist World Affairs program. Freedom Now is committed to the principle of the rights of all peoples and nations to self-determination. We thank you deeply for your contribution to KPFK, which permits programs like Freedom Now to stay on the air. In this era of corporate acquisition and co-optation of all dissident media, we provide the microphone, challenging their corporate and racist point of view. So stay tuned for our agenda here at Freedom Now.
Fellas, I'm ready to get up and do my thing. I want to get into it, man, you know.
Peace, hoteps, and wisdom to all of our faithful and devoted listeners out there in the radio verse. This is Brother Brandon Sankara, and I want to start things off with a thank you to all of you listeners out there who continue to support Freedom Now through this latest season of Fund Drive. You keep us on our mission and allow us to bring you our agenda for today, Saturday, February 8th, 2025. First things first, we have yet another installment of the African Drumbeat Historical Calendar for the week, being brought to you by our dear ancestor and Freedom Now founder, Baba Didan Kamathi, always reminding you that every day is a day in African history. Then, Sister Tej will be joined on the line by Executive Director of the Pan-African Film and Arts Festival, Oduduwa Olatunji. He's giving us more info on this year's festival, its theme, Dream Beyond, and what you should be putting on your calendar this Black History Month. Finally, in the second half of our show, our very own treasure trove of wisdom, author, historian, and professor of African American Studies at the University of Houston, and Freedom Now co-producer Dr. Gerald Horne, is being joined on the line by Preston Lauterbach, author of the book Before Elvis: The African American Musicians Who Made the King. Be sure to stay tuned in. Now, while we are in Fund Drive and still able to bring you this much content, we want to remind you to please support our efforts here at KPFK. Community radio is more than radio. This station is a look at our community. We come together to be informed, entertained, and enlightened. What you get on this station is greater than what you'll find on social media or your streaming services. That's because this station is committed to community first. I'm here to remind you that you rely on this station for news, music, and culture. You value community radio for enhancing your town as a place you love. So now is a good time to support this nonprofit station with a financial contribution. Donations from people like you make this station possible. And here's how to help. To make your pledge, call 818-985-5735. That's 818-985-KPFK, or go online to kpfk.org. Now, of course, I'm going to be on the ones and twos as we pour this knowledge, making sure your mental cup runneth over with revolutionary wisdom, right here to quench your mental thirst on Freedom Now, KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, and KPFK streaming live on the web. To make sure that we stay on a smooth ride with that cultural vibe you know and love, we'll be enjoying a musical bottom featuring Zap Mama, Burna Boy, Sonny Rollins, Cal Jader, Freddie Hubbard, Herbie Hancock, and Joe Henderson. Now, people get ready for this train to come and taking you one step closer to mental liberation, and stay tuned for that beat of the historical drum, followed by an interview with Sister Tej and Oduduwa Olatunji.
is my time. Brother's killing brother day after day.
Alafia, this is Brother Dion with the African Drumbeat Historical Calendar for the week of February 10th. Freedom Now provides this historical calendar to further contribute to our appreciation of the struggles and the inevitability of victory of the human and spiritual values over greed and super profits. Nowhere on the AM or FM dial, or even on the web, will you find such an historical calendar that covers the world from a revolutionary perspective. We urge you to make your contributions for a more just world for our children and future generations. February 11th, 1890, the United States opens 11 million acres of traditional Native American Sioux land to all white settlers in a continued effort at genocide by forcibly taking the land from the indigenous people and giving it to Euro-Americans. February 11th, 1990, Nelson Mandela, released after 27 years of imprisonment on Robben Island in South Africa. The United States CIA provided logistics for the capture of Nelson Mandela, but the worldwide Free South Africa movement forced the racist apartheid regime to free Mandela, and subsequently with the rise of the African National Congress and the Pan-African Congress, the elimination of racial apartheid, the economic apartheid has grown. February 12, 1968, British dock workers refused to unload California table grapes as organized labor support of the United Farm Workers grape boycott spreads throughout Europe. February 12, 1831, Nat Turner's revolt in Virginia begins with a divine signal, a solar eclipse, that God wants Africans free. February 12, 1909, the NAACP is founded in New York City, the oldest civil rights movement in the United States, and in many areas the most militant from the rank-and-file membership. February 13, 1837, flour riots in New York City when the cost doubles. The speculators and the masses break into the flour dealers so they can have the basic subsistence of life, thereby causing a police response and the masses taking to the streets in rebellions over the question of bread. February 13, 1800, a Canadian court ruling outlaws slavery in Quebec a full 50-plus years before the United States outlawed slavery. February 13, 1949, Sorjina Chattopadhyaya Naida, an Indian sister who worked for a society where the Dalits or untouchables will become the leaders of Indian societies, she crosses over to the ancestor world. She was an Indian poet, political leader who was born into a highly respected Brahmin family. She rebelled by marrying out of her caste and became a political leader in the decolonization struggle with a focus not just on British colonialism, but also upper caste oppression of the lower caste. She was jailed more than Mahatma Gandhi and built organizations that were inclusive regardless of color, caste, or gender. After independence, she served as governor of United Provinces until her death. February 14, 1914, Sister Miti Kitili, a Kenyan militant sister, a freedom fighter against British colonialism, escapes from prison and leads armed struggle. February 15, 1851, African abolitionists storm a Boston courtroom and rescue fugitive slaves. February 16, 1960, Fidel Castro becomes premier of revolutionary Cuba. February 16, 1975, the Black Liberation Army launches an amphibious assault on Rikers Island in New York prison to free Assata Shakur. February 16, 1958, Elizabeth Axtella, a Tillit or indigenous sister from Alaska, was a ferocious leader against the apartheid system imposed by Europeans living in the Americas against indigenous people of Africa. She was a Grand Camp President of the Alaskan Native Sisterhood Association. February 16th, 1st century AD, Phong Thanh Chien, a Vietnamese woman warrior and leader who, while pregnant, led the Vietnamese peasants in battle against the Chinese efforts at colonialism. During battle, she gave birth, then strapped her newborn baby on her back and proceeded to hack her way through a sea of Chinese soldiers. This has been Freedom Now at 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara. To hear a replay of tonight's program or prior programs, please go to kpfk.org under Audio Archives, Freedom Now. Please join us in a unity chant of Amandala Awetu. The power belongs to the people. 3 times Amandala Awetu.
is my time, singing revelation. Ja, 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 ja,
This is Sister Tej with Freedom Now, and it's that time of year, February, Black History Month, 2025. We're excited to highlight the Pan-African Film and Arts Festival this year, Dream Beyond, and we are honored to be joined by the Executive Director of the Pan-African Film Festival, our brother Oduduwa Olatunji. Welcome to Freedom Now.
Oh, thank you. Freedom Now. Yeah, I love it.
Right on. Well, we know it's a very busy time for you and with all of the excitement that's going on. And so can you give our listeners some background about the film festival and tell us what's going on this year?
Okay, well, the festival was started in 1992 by Ayuko Babu, Danny Glover, and Janae Dubois. And they were all three experts in the field of politics and media and culture and arts. And they saw the need for more opportunity for Black voices in Hollywood. And they started the Pan-African Film Festival. It's been going on for 33 years now. This is our 33rd year. I was the first person to ever hand out flyers for the film festival. So I've been around all 33 years and seen it all happen from time of a child till now. And we are coming to a crucial point in the history of the country and of the world. And thus, all of the artists are coming to a crucial point in their works and in the festival's history as well.
Since you were, in the first round of handing out the flyers for the Pan-African Film Festival 33 years ago, and then now, you're going into this week of being the director of the film festival. Can you just kind of talk about why you are personally excited from the growth that you've seen yourself as a person through your own eyes, and then now what's happening in empowering Black creatives and making impact in the community?
Well, one of the exciting things that I've seen has been the complete democratization of the filmmaking process. When we started off and when I was a little boy, we used to have to carry film cans, and it was like very expensive, and it was the type of people who were cinephiles, they're cinephiles and dignitaries and people who had access to cinema as an art form to create. And over the years, what has really happened is that more voices have come into the fold through technology. And now everything is digitized. Everything is, done with cell phones, done with, digital cameras and different things like that. And it's really enabled more people to tell their stories, whether those are stories of resistance, whether those are human stories, whether those are, documentaries about personal struggle, like whatever it is. But it's really opened up the Pan-African world to being able to create and connect. And I've seen so many artists come through the Pan-African Film Festival and build careers and build their voice. People like Ava DuVernay, who just worked at the festival, and then became a huge director. Also, actors and different people. I mean, it's really part of the fabric of Black art, and we've had people like, oh man, you name it. I can't even go into Sidney Poitier, all sorts of people over the years. So it's amazing. It's wonderful to be part of. It's really a gift because myself as an artist, I get to have a community, and then myself as a Black artist and a Pan-African artist as well, I get to talk and collaborate with voices and get opinions from the diaspora, and you get to see, you know, like what's going on. Like I remember over the years, this maybe happened like in 2013, we got a chance to go to Cuba, to Havana, and partner with some filmmakers in Havana. And so I got to see what healthcare in Cuba really was like, and you know, like how amazing it actually was, and like how deep the propaganda goes over here to discredit things like that. And so through the Pan-African Film Festival, you really get to see the truth of the world. And it's a profound thing to be able to shepherd.
Right on. That sounds like a huge invite for the community right there, for artists, documentary filmmakers, community members. And so empowering Black creatives, can you talk to our listeners about some of the films that you wanted to highlight for this year's festival? And just a reminder, listening audience, that if they wanted to check out these films while we're talking with our brother, Oduduwa Olatunji, the executive director of the Pan-African Film Festival, the website is www.paff.org, www.paff.org.
Well, our opening night film was Magazine Dreams. We did that last night. We premiered it last night. That is Jonathan Major's latest film, and he plays like a bodybuilder who it's kind of like he has problems relating to people, almost like a Taxi Driver type of film. Very visceral, very intense. It's a great performance. So Magazine Dreams, that was a really big one. Also, we have the Sister Nancy story. It's called Bomb Bomb, after her famous song. You know, that's a great one. We have another film, The Origins of the Black Underworld, which is Matty Rich, a filmmaker who did The Inkwell. If y'all remember that film, this is his latest independent film. He self-financed this film. It's the story actually of based off of his grandfather, who was one of the Black children who got adopted by the Italian mob, and then as a result started his own sort of community organization, if you will, his community own mafia. And so that's a really interesting one. Also, we have one of the films that is like a big world premiere. It's by a director named Kamasi Hill. It's called Born in the Struggle. And it's basically talking about the children of Black Panthers and of the civil rights movement and the Black resistance movement, and, you know, how it is dealing with coming up in that. And like people like Ta-Nehisi Coates, excuse me, you know, folks like that. That's a really interesting film. Also, Mount Mutombo, which is the story that chronicles Dikembe Mutombo and his basically humanitarian efforts around the world, and before he unfortunately died of cancer, how he used basketball to build hospitals and, you know, rebuild his homeland. Soundtrack to the Coup d'etat, which is an Oscar-nominated film, and it's basically, you know, about Max Roach and Abby Lincoln and how they intersect with Patrice Lumumba and jazz and the decolonization movement of the 1960s. That's an Oscar film. Also, Drip Like Coffee, which is sort of a West Coast premiere. It's a story, love story about two baristas who kind of come together. It's a really good date night film type of thing. And, you know, many other films. Also, we have, oh man, so many great films. We have so many great shorts. That's one of the things. We have Oscar qualifying shorts. Man, the shorts are where it's at.
Right on. Also, I noticed that some of the documentaries that are showing, there's one called Fanon.
Oh, actually, that got pulled. That is not Fanon is not showing. I know that. Unfortunately, I don't know what the situation is with a distributor, but that's another thing about film and about, you know, the global business thing. It's like, you know, we have our revolutionary biographies, and they're caught up in who tells the story, how they tell the story, letting us tell the story, and so forth and so on. So Fanon is not going to be at PAFF, unfortunately. We're all crying because of that.
Oh, well, we look forward to it next time. And we also
but we do actually have, it's not quite as politically deep, if you will, but humanitarian-wise, Mount Mutombo, which is the last film on the life of Dikembe Mutombo, and basically his life as a humanitarian and how he used being a professional athlete and playing basketball to build hospitals in Africa and be a global sportsman for justice and all, healthcare, all sorts of stuff. It's really good.
Right. And just a reminder, listening audience, that if they wanted to check out these films while we're talking with our brother, Oduduwa Olatunji, the executive director of the Pan-African Film Festival, the website is www.paff.org, www.paff.org. And we also wanted to shout out UCLA graduate in the Black Film Arts Movement times, Billy Woodbury, who's also having a film being shown called Mario.
Yes. Right? Yes, definitely.
Regarding Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau. And
yes. Okay.
I did want to go over just a few calendar dates. If you can talk about this, there's a centerpiece and the closing night gala.
Yeah, the closing night gala is going to be a film called My Dead Friend Zoe, which is starring Ed Harris and Morgan Freeman. And it's basically a film all about what happens to soldiers after their friends get killed in war and the process of dealing with that. That's going to be on Sunday, February 16th. That's going to be at the Culver Theater. And then the centerpiece is going to be Wednesday, February 12th. And that is a film about the SW1s, which were Public Enemy's dancer and security forces. So, if you like old school hip hop that has, Public Enemy in it, obviously, a lot of the older Def Jam guys. I know it also had KRS-One in it. It's really kind of a great piece if you like hip hop, straight up. Yeah.
Did you want to highlight any other films for our listening audience?
There's so many films. It's 150 films. Please go look at our screening guide, which is available on paff.org. Also, you could download our app, or you can come to the theater and get a screening schedule, and you're sure to find something for you. There's so many great films.
And so, did you want to tell our listening audience where the film festival is going to be, the details?
Yeah, it's going to be at the Culver Theater, which is in downtown Culver City. Mm-hmm. It's on Washington Boulevard, I believe. It's right next to Amazon Studios, actually. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And that information is on the website as well. And the film festival is happening February 10th through the 17th. And we do want to highlight that today, February 8th, Saturday, one of the events. So the film festival is happening at the Culver Theater, but this specific event is happening at the Cinemark Theater, sponsored by BAJI, the Black Alliance for Just Immigration. Mm-hmm. And this event will show some short films. And the event is Black immigrants telling our stories and visioning the future. And then there will be a panel afterwards. The details are on the website, www.paff.org. Shout out to our sister, Nana Jemfi.
Yes, Nana.
So any closing words for our listening audience before we wrap up here, Brother Oduduwa Olatunji, Executive Director of the Pan-African Film Festival?
Oh, thank you. Yes, just that we're living under a crazy techno-oligarchy, which we have never had something like this in the history of the world. We've had people control media and people control narratives, but I don't think we've had this reach on it. It's like, I forget the guy's name, William Randolph Hearst, right? He was like the big newspaper guy and everyone was like reading the newspapers. Well, now within a matter of seconds, you have to wait for the newspaper to get published. But now in a matter of seconds, you're able to control whether that's politic, whether that is media. And it's really important for Pan-African people of the world to put themselves in the fight for control of it, because you have to understand that they want to erase and homogenize the history so that they can control whether it's the Treasury or whether it's Social Security or whatever, all those people are doing. And us as Pan-African people standing in solidarity with other people of color and other groups all around the world, we have to let them know that we're not going to do that. We're not going to let them do that. And that we know the history already, and we're going to keep telling the history, and we're going to keep telling new stories. And, it's about communication and relating, because if they want to relate to us through their history and what their perspective is, we can come to the table in the spirit of truth and reconciliation and going forward in an egalitarian society and manner. I don't know, maybe that got too heavy. But
No, that's what it's about. And, that's why we are called Freedom Now.
I thought this was the right place.
This definitely is the right place. And, at a time in our society while books are being banned, we're educational radio here at KPFK. And so come and check out some of the documentary films happening at the film festival, the film guide on the website. There's a filter for documentaries, and stay in tune with what's happening and in the history as well, especially in these times. Well, we've been speaking with our brother, Oduduwa Olatunji, the executive director of the Pan-African Film Festival, happening February 10th through the 17th. And thank you so much for joining us today on Freedom Now. We look forward to seeing you at the festival.
Yes, definitely.
This is KPFK 90.7 FM Los Angeles, 98.7 FM Santa Barbara, and for the world at www.kpfk.org. My name is Maggie Lepeak.
I'm Gary Baca.
And we're here to talk to you for a few minutes about a project we have going. It is the Transmitter Repair Fund in our December fund drive. Now, due to years of deferred maintenance at our transmitter site, we have been operating at only half the power. But now we have an exciting opportunity to amplify our impact, literally. We are ready to increase the power of our station, allowing us to reach more listeners, improve broadcast quality, and connect with communities that need our message. However, we can't do it without you. Please support the Transmitter Repair Fund in our December fund drive by calling 818-985-5735, option 2. Gary, what's that number again?
818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK, option 2.
Or pledge online anytime at kpfk.org. Any additional funds raised for this project will support our daily operations, including resuming regular maintenance at our transmitter site. Now here's something special, Gary, so get ready. Drum roll, please. John Densmore, legendary drummer and founding member of The Doors, and a wonderful friend to this radio station, has donated $5,000. That's 5 G's.
Whoa.
To our Transmitter Repair Fund. And you know what, Gary? John said, let's match this and help the station get back its power.
Yes. And the transmitter is something that we need. We need to broadcast at full power. We need to be heard and not silenced. So it's up to you to go to your phone now and support this separate fund that we have to maintain our transmitter. 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Go to your phone now. Even if you pledged before and pledged for the station, this is very important. This is something that we're trying to do, and individually reach out to you and say, hey, you know what? We need to operate at full power. So we need a strong signal. So it's up to you to come up front and step up and help us out. That way we can keep KPFK with this signal going all over Southern California. 112,000 watts of listener-sponsored radio. So big shout out to John Densmore from The Doors,
John.
For helping us out. And it's many people like you that help us out during this time of need. 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Let the phone room know that you want to help us with our transmitter so we could be restored to full power, and that way we can broadcast throughout all of Southern California.
That's right, Gary. Southern California and beyond. It's people-powered, and you have the power. Call us right now, 818-985-5735. Hit option 2. That's 818-985-KPFK, and online anytime at kpfk.org. Now, Gary, for 65 years, KPFK has been a vital part of our community, with the goal of bringing together the voices, music, and stories that define Southern California. With its 110,000-watt transmitter atop Mount Wilson, KPFK is one of the most powerful FM stations in the western United States. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, due to years of deferred maintenance at our transmitter site, we've been operating at only half the power. But this is such an exciting opportunity for folks to help us increase the power of our radio station. And again, to reach more listeners, to improve broadcast quality, and connect with those communities that really need us the most. Once again, it comes down to you. We cannot do this work without you. Increasing the station's power requires new power supplies for the transmitter, replacing the ice shields for the antenna, upgrading the cooling system for the control building, and adding a new dry line to hydrator unit. The total cost of this project is $20,000, and we're asking for your help to make this a reality. With John Densmore's $5,000 pledge, we're on our way to reaching our goal, but we can actually double that goal if we can match the $5,000.
Yes, let's match that. So $5,000 on the table. So that would mean maybe 5 of you pledging $1,000 to help us get our transmitter to full power. Or maybe that's 10 of you pledging $500. Whatever you can do makes a difference. $250 per person will get us to that $10,000 match. 818-985-5735. So what's happening is when you drive out of town, there's a signal that's coming from Tijuana, and it's bleeding right into our KPFK signal. And so for some folks, they're like, hey, the signal's not that strong. Kind of annoying because you want to listen to KPFK throughout your drive and your commute. So this would help us out, and this would bring back our signal to full power, and that's because of you. 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Once we do this, we're good. This is one of the last things on our list that we need to fix. And as we change as a radio station, we're going to make sure that we give you the programming that you need and love, and you'll want to hear it with this full signal. 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK.
818-985-5735. Press option 2 to donate. Your gift of any size brings us closer to realizing this dream. Because, Gary, it really is a dream to be back up to full power, because we've been at almost 50%, sometimes even less, over the last few years. So there's so many areas of Southern California that have been missing us. You can make this dream a reality. Together, we can ensure that KPFK continues to inspire, inform, and uplift more people than ever before. Join us in powering up for the future. Power to the people. To contribute, visit www.kpfk.org/support-KPFK. You'll see the transmitter icon on the website. Just click that. It'll take you right where you need to go. Also, if you wanted to contact me, feel free to email me at mlepique@kpfk.org. That's MLEPIQUE@kpfk.org. Every dollar counts, and your support truly matters.
Just one of many bills that we have, but John Densmore from The Doors. Can you imagine The Doors? I mean, this iconic group that gave us Light My Fire and Hello, I Love You is challenging us and asking you. John Densmore is literally asking you to pledge your support. He put down the $5,000. I just can't believe it. John Densmore, out of all people, the drummer from The Doors, is challenging us and saying, you know what, I'm going to help you guys out. But if I'm going to put this money in, I want other people to pledge and put their money in as well.
That's right.
So that's why it's so important, and it's an honor to have John Densmore contributing to this radio station, listening and supporting us as he has through the many years, along with Robbie Krieger from The Doors. So, he's challenging us to step up. So pledge at any amount you can. Any amount helps. And you'll be right in there with John Densmore and the KPFK family, and we'll be restored back to the full power that we have to offer, that we should be offering. So we're only at 50%, and we'd like to be at 100. So that means you call now, 818-985-5735.
Show your support. Call us right now. It's people powered. You have the power. 818-985-5735. Hit option 2. That's 818-985-KPFK. And online anytime at kpfk.org. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Maggie. And thank you to our listeners and the people pledging and calling in now. 818-985-5735. Don't forget, people-powered independent radio. Call the number now so we can be restored back to full power.
You got the power. Thank you so much, and let's make this happen together. Happy holidays, everyone.
For KPFK Pacifica Radio, this is Gerald Horne, and with me on the line is Preston Lauterbach, author of the book Before Elvis, the African-American Musicians Who Made the King. Thank you for joining us on Freedom Now, KPFK Los Angeles, Preston Lauterbach.
Well, the pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me, and I hope everybody is safe out there.
Right on. So why did you write this book?
I've been researching what a lot of people consider to be obscure African-American musicians for about the last 25 years. It's not every day that you get an opportunity to spotlight some of these originators in the mainstream, but the 2022 Elvis biopic created that exact opportunity because the movie depicted Elvis hanging out with his influences like Little Richard, B.B. King, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and Big Mama Thornton. So that was something. And then the fans and the critics of the movie said, well, we need to know more about this. And I thought, all right, I can do that.
And you did. You mentioned Willa Big Mama Thornton. Who was she and what role does she play in your book?
One song that, virtually everybody in the world would associate primarily with Elvis Presley is Hound Dog. I think everybody probably knows at the moment that they hear it, of a certain age anyway. Well, what many other people don't know is that the originator of that is an African-American female singer by the name of Willie Mae Big Mama Thornton. She was born in Alabama in, I believe it was 1926, was orphaned. She lost her mother at an early age, and then her father, I think, remarried and moved. And so here she is, a child near Anniston, Alabama. And so she goes to work the only way that she knows how, and that is as a singer, and eventually joins a road show, and many years later lands in Houston, Texas, and was singing one night at the El Dorado Ballroom there in the 3rd Ward when a executive with the Peacock Records company by the name of Evelyn Johnson happened to be in the house and heard Big Mama. Well, look, when you hear Big Mama, you heard something, because she is a vocalist of unmatched power and tremendous emotional delivery. She's also a great presence. Everybody who was around her described her as, being Big Mama. She was stout, and she was not one to be messed with. And she had that aura about her on stage and in her songs. Well, she recorded a couple of pieces for this Black-owned record company in Houston, beginning around 1950. In 1953, the company president, a man by the name of Don Roby, realized he really needed to come up with a hit because he had this great talent, Big Mama Thornton. And so he hired these 2 young Jewish guys, Lieber and Stoller. I always mix up their first names. I believe it is Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller, pretty sure. Anyway, these guys are prolific songwriters. At the time, they were really just teenagers. And so Roby hired these 2 guys to write a hit for Big Mama, and Hound Dog is exactly what they came up with. Well, a youngster by the name of Elvis Presley in Memphis, Tennessee had purchased the Big Mama Thornton recording of Hound Dog while he was, just a regular old anonymous music fan, probably after hearing it on the radio there on WDIA, I imagine, or WHBQ with Dewey Phillips. And it ends up, you know, after he hits it big, becoming a major part of his repertoire. And for Big Mama Thornton, you know, this relationship with Elvis Presley ended up being, it was something that took a lot out of her, because she was never paid properly for her hit. Now look, her version of Hound Dog was a massive hit. The record company estimated that it had sold 500,000, which means that it probably sold more like her estimate of 2 million, because they were always kind of underestimating things. And she was never paid properly for that. And then when Elvis's version came out and sold close to 10 million, you know, she was kind of cut out of the loop, because she was not a composer of the song. And the only way she could really make that song work for her is to get out on the road and promote her version of it, right? And so that became a part of her legacy early on, and it became a part of her story. I think that, you know, we talk today about the issues of cultural appropriation and artist exploitation when it comes to mainstream white artists performing Black originated material. Part of the reason we have that awareness is because of Big Mama Thornton, because she really got out in the media and on stage while she was a touring artist and said, hey, this is my song that this guy Elvis is doing, and nobody recognizes me. And so she was one of the first people to really point out that disparity and open up that issue that, you know, we're still talking about today when it comes to these artist legacies.
Now, a good deal of your book concerns copyright theft and media segregation. Could you elaborate?
A lot of people, I think, look at Elvis as having stolen Black music. And I would make a distinction between appropriation and exploitation. Appropriation, I think, is closer to what he did, which is he performed Black originated material, both songs and his dance style, you know, were Black originated. And because he was a white guy in the 1950s, to really touch on this issue of media segregation you brought up, a vastly greater amount of Americans had access to Elvis singing a song like Hound Dog than they did to Big Mama Thornton singing a song like Hound Dog. Black-oriented radio was still in its infancy in that time. Black radio was the radio industry in America was as segregated as anything else, with a relatively small bit of the radio bandwidth being devoted to Black programming. And so look, if you're a fan of music in the mid 1950s, 9/10 of your radio dial is going to be white-oriented programming. And you're going to have way more likelihood to run into an artist like Elvis doing a Black song, or an artist like Pat Boone, you know, doing a Fats Domino song, than you are the original. And that's the way that media segregation has really pushed the white cover artists of Black original songs to the forefront, when really the originators belong there. When it comes to the issue of copyright theft, you know, probably the best example of that comes through an artist by the name of Arthur Big Boy Crudup. He was a prolific recording artist, African-American from Forest, Mississippi. He was born around 1905 and started recording for a subsidiary of RCA. So he ended up really working for one of the major record labels during the 1940s. He was a brilliant, poetic, visionary songwriter, a tough, emotional singer. And you know, if you go back and you listen to a lot of his recordings from the 40s, you're going to hear electric guitar, you know, you're going to hear some twangy bass. You're going to hear a lot of the kinds of elements that Elvis Presley ended up picking up on. Well, Elvis, for his very first hit, his version being released in 1954, he covered an Arthur Crudup composition called That's All Right, also known as That's All Right, Mama. And when Elvis's version came out, Elvis and really it's the producer and manufacturer of that record, a guy by the name of Sam Phillips, who ran an independent record company called Sun Records in Memphis, Tennessee. Well, look, Sam did what he was supposed to do. He credited Arthur Crudup on the record label of Elvis's version. And I was able to find the canceled checks of Sam sending royalty payments out on that particular song, That's All Right, Mama. Well, they should have gone to Arthur Crudup, right, as the composer of the song. However, Arthur had lost the copyright to a producer who he had recorded his songs for by the name of Lester Melrose. And so, look, you got to really think about, put yourself in Arthur Crudup's shoes. You know, you're excited about making a record. You've got a song or 5 songs or 10 songs. You know records. You know what's on the jukebox, what's on the radio, what's in the records. That's what you want to do. And so this old slick producer says, well, sure, I'll make you a record. You just got to assign me the publishing. So that's the kind of code word for ownership of the song, publishing. Well, look, you're a recording artist, a singer. You don't know or care about publishing. Sure, whatever. Well, in these types of deals, that's how artists lost their ownership, because the copyright and the ownership of the actual song went through these kind of old-fashioned channels of the way sheet music used to be sold. So the publishers of the sheet music back in, before the days of recording, they were the manufacturers. Therefore, they were collecting the revenues. The exact same thing applied to records. And so it put people like Lester Melrose, who understood the way that the business worked, in the driver's seat, and it made it quite easy to exploit people like Arthur Big Boy Crudup, even though they were the creative ones.
Memphis, Tennessee is the locale for your book, Preston Lauterbach. There is this idea that is quite popular that New Orleans, another Mississippi River port town, was the seedbed for the music we call jazz. There are those who think that because archivists at Tulane University in New Orleans began collecting oral history at the middle of the 20th century, and stretching back in memories of these artists being talked to, stretching back to the end of the 19th century, and that helps to contribute to this idea of New Orleans as the seedbed of the music we call jazz. But there are others who think that Memphis has received short shrift in that regard. Do you agree?
I do. I would say, first of all, bless those archivists for interviewing all of those, long dead voices and preserving them. I think that certainly it's true that the tradition of New Orleans jazz goes back a long way. Whether or not it's really the birthplace or the most important place, yeah, maybe it does come down more to, where those historic resources are. Like you said, both Memphis and New Orleans are Mississippi River towns, and so a lot of the same musicians and a lot of the same music flowed through both of those places. And I've heard quite a lot of, in fact, probably in some of the oral histories you're referring to, a lot of talk from musicians who were on riverboats. And that was one of the good paying jobs for musicians in the early days of jazz. And so that river and that experience of being on the boat and being hired as a musician, I think that's one of the ways that the music disseminated, before it was really a commercial item in any kind of way, before it had been put on sheet music or recorded or anything like that. Memphis has its own kind of claim to fame. I think we're also talking to a certain extent about marketing, and New Orleans has marketed itself very well as the whether it's the Jazz and Heritage Festival, whether it's the birthplace of jazz, with some place like Preservation Hall. It's a place that has celebrated and embraced its jazz roots over the years, probably for longer than any other place has. Memphis, conversely, has called itself the home of the blues. And there's a lot more to Memphis music than blues. W.C. Handy, of course, is not only the father of the blues, but really the father of the Memphis music scene. And he was there on Beale Street in the early 20th century and became the first successful Black music business figure, in my mind, simply because he set up a publishing company and started composing his own songs, his own original compositions, and selling them, and they became hits. And so that's really how blues became popular, or in part how blues became popular. Well, if you listen to Handy's music, it's quite jazzy. It's just that tag blues hung on to it, and that's how people identified with it. And so I would put Memphis's claim as, you know, a birthplace of jazz, right there with W.C. Handy. And it's kind of a question of, well, how do we embrace the music? What do we call it, and how do we market it?
Speaking of which, that is to say marketing, the airport in New Orleans is named after Louis Armstrong. And of course, it would be appropriate if the airport in Memphis were named after, for example, Jimmy Longford or W.C. Handy.
Yeah, you got that right.
Speaking of which, who are the newborns and what role do they play in your book?
The newborns are, of course, they're a musical family. The two members of that family whom I focus on, one are Calvin Newborn and two Phineas Newborn Jr. They are two of the great 20th century jazz musicians. Phineas Newborn Jr. was a piano player, and during his time, he was born in, I think, 33, and Calvin was born in 32, or I might have that reversed or off by one, I'm not sure. But they were born in the early 30s, 1 year apart from each other. Phineas was a prodigy. I got to know someone who knew him pretty well, who told me, look, he could play any instrument that he touched from about the age of 8. And so he could play wind instruments, string instruments, but piano was really his love. And if you listen to, I mean, you can go on YouTube, just put Phineas Newborn Jr. and hit play, and your mind will be blown. Everything that the guy did was stunning in a technical sense. I mean, he was just so good. And his brother Calvin Newborn was a guitar player, and I knew Calvin pretty well. Calvin's been gone for 5-7 years, something like that. But Calvin introduced himself to me as the man who taught Elvis to dance. And so Calvin, you know, went out on tour with one of these R&B groups in the early 50s and said that he saw the women going crazy for this saxophone player. I think his name was Red Prysock, who would just be out there thrusting his hips. And so as a young guitarist, Calvin was like, well, I want the girls to go crazy for me. So he started doing the same thing. And when he brought that to his nightclub act in Memphis, around this, you know, a little bit after that, he became friends with a young Elvis Presley and brought him out to the Flamingo Room on Beale Street in order to enjoy the music there. And so Calvin and Phineas are kind of like, you know, the parallel universe Elvises, to the extent that Phineas's first major record deal he signed in 1956 with RCA Records. So that's the company Elvis went to in 1955. So these two giants of the Memphis sound, who nobody at the time really knew had literally played on stage together, you know, and were from the same musical lineage, were both on top of their respective worlds. Just for that moment, 56, 57, things got quite complicated for Phineas Jr. after that, and I will leave it to readers of the book to put together the rest of the story. And really, Phineas Jr. is the one who brings us to Los Angeles, because he ended up having some trouble in New York and setting up shop on the West Coast. And so he was out there playing, you know, with the West Coast jazz on throughout the late 50s, 1960s, on into the 70s before he came back home to Memphis. Big Mama Thornton actually was out in LA during that same time. She was entertaining at this bar in Watts where it was like half the cast of Sanford and Son. You know, they had Aunt Esther out there dancing with fire. I mean, it must have been a wild scene. Must have been a lot of fun. But yeah, those Newborn brothers are something else. You know, I really urge people to listen to their music, because they're both just absolute geniuses. Calvin, a brilliant guitar player. Phineas Jr., you know, according to most, was just about without peer as a piano player in the 20th century.
Finally, Preston Lauterbach, author of the book Before Elvis, what about lawsuits today with musicians, many of them Black musicians, seeking to recover royalties and the like? Where do those lawsuits stand?
Well, you know, the one that I kind of ran into in researching this book has to do with Arthur Big Boy Crudup. I mentioned him earlier. He was the original writer and original recording artist of what would become Elvis's first hit. Well, Elvis went on, he liked Crudup so much, and I must add that Elvis identified Crudup as either his favorite singer or his big inspiration when people first started interviewing Elvis around 1956. So he did acknowledge Crudup. in addition to, putting his name on the record and at least attempting to get his royalties to him. Now, as I said earlier, Crudup's producer, Lester Melrose, took ownership of all of Crudup's compositions. He still owed Melrose, still owed Crudup royalties, either as a recording artist on sales of Crudup records, because every one of those old records that sells, even if it's just a percentage of a penny, the recording artist is entitled to a royalty, no matter what. As the writer of record, Crudup also stood to gain at least some kind of a royalty per sale of one of his compositions. Now, with Elvis having recorded 3 of them, those royalties added up, according to some estimates, into the 6 or perhaps 7 figures. We're talking about hundreds of thousands, maybe into the low millions of dollars that Crudup never saw. He started fighting for his royalties, but by the time he was able to find a good manager who could help him out with this, Mr. Crudup was at the end of his life. And so he did, in fact, die poor. And he predicted as much in this really, truly horrible scene. Mr. Crudup's manager, Mr. Crudup, and a couple of Mr. Crudup's family members went up to the publishing company office in New York, expecting to receive a check for all the royalties that they should have paid him all along. And the publishing company's attorney said, "You know what? We're not giving you anything. You're gonna have to sue us if you want your money." Well, that must have just about broke old Mr. Crudup's heart, because he died not too long after that. That is tragic that he went to his grave that way, but his family did not give up the fight. And I don't want to go into too many details about, living people's business, but they have ended up doing what many thought couldn't be done. They ultimately obtained his rights, and I believe they've done okay with them. I'll just put it like that.
Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Preston Lauterbach, author of the book Before Elvis. Thank you for joining us on Freedom Now, KPFK, Los Angeles.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
In closing, we'd like to thank our guests, starting with Oduduwa Olatunji, Executive Director of the Pan-African Film and Arts Festival. Next up, we thank Preston Lauterbach, author of the book Before Elvis, the African-American Musicians Who Made the King. Shout out to Dr. Gerald Horne for doing what he does best in guiding this train of mental liberation towards Pan-African enlightenment for yet another Saturday. Word to producer Sister Tej. Much love to our spiritual backbone and Freedom Now founder Baba Didan Kamati on the historical calendar. Shout out to our marvelous engineer. And last but certainly not least, thank you to all of our loyal listeners and supporters. This station is an essential resource in your life, whether it's reliable information you can use or joyful music that inspires your community. This station provides you programming you rely on. You are an essential part of this station too. Listeners provide the funding that keeps the news, information, and arts alive. Listeners' money fuels this station's power to operate. So if you're going to continue to count on this station, please remember its staff and volunteers count on you. Your contribution this hour enables this essential resource to provide vibrant radio. So here is how to help. To make your pledge, call 818-985-5735. That's 818-985-KPFK. You can also go online to kpfk.org. And this right here has been Brother Brandon Sankara. So you can join us on Facebook at Freedom Now Gerald Horne. You can email the program at freedomnow@kpfk.org or go online to our audio archives at kpfk.org. Scroll down to find Freedom Now and you'll be able to hear this program as well as 60 days worth of prior programming here at KPFK 90.7 FM. We now send you off to our sister Assumpta with Spotlight Africa, coming up next with issues facing Mama Africa. And until next Saturday here at Freedom Now, we stand running our marathon, ready for revolution.
We state these facts only to let you know that those of us who are revolutionary, Pan-Africanists, is not because we love revolution. It is historically determined, and we have no alternative but to follow history and to use history for the benefit of our people.
Power to the people.